Welcome to ePathshala PG courses on computer science. The course is about web technology and today we are going to see about the third module, services on the internet. The objective of this modules are to know the different services provided in the internet, and the module also gives a brief idea about how an email works, and the module also gives an idea about how an instant messaging works in the internet. The various services on the internet are listed here. Let us take some of the services like FTP, Telnet, a World Wide Web, email, instant messaging, voice over IP, Gopher, etc. And lot more services are there. There is a service called a file transfer protocol. It's an FTP, normally used to transfer files between computers on a TCP IP network. Simple commands allow the users to list, change, create folders on a remote computer. We can upload and download files, and typical use of this protocol is to transfer files from the web content from the developers PCs to the web server. There is one another protocol like this called a Telnet protocol. Using a Telnet, a user can remotely log on to a remote network or a remote server using the TCP IP network and have control over it like a local user, and which also includes control over various running programs in the remote server. In contrast to an FTP, this Telnet allows operations, file operations only, and typical use is to configure and test on a remote web server. So, using the Telnet protocol, we can actually configure a remote server sitting in a local machine, and like a local user you can configure it and test any remote web server. And there is another service called a World Wide Web, which we have already seen in the last module. It is a major service, that is the main service that is provided in the internet. It is the greatest shared resource of information created by mankind. So, all the information, web informations are available as web pages, and they are available to all users via the internet. All the resources are provided to all the users through the internet, and they are all available in a web server. And there are many servers that are all connected through the internet, and user can access any item on the web through a given URL. And we saw that how to give the URL and what is the format of the URL. So, URL is actually a uniform resource locator, that is a address of any information that is provided in the internet. So, if you want to locate any information on the internet, we need to give the URL of the web page, and it is given in the form of an address. It is like using a HTTP protocol, we need to give the address, and we can see here that the URL is looking like http:// and then www.ninu.edu.pg and then the name of the page. So, this is how you can access any resource on the internet, and these informations are available at various places in the internet. And the next service that is normally used in the internet is an email service. So, email is actually a computer to computer messaging. It is inexpensive, and it is also quiet, but it is not instant. But it is the most popular service on the internet, even more than surfing, which means that surfing means that we are browsing the internet. So, more than browsing the internet, email is the most popular service by which we can send messages between computers. And but it's nowadays it is overtaken, this email service is overtaken by instant messagings, and we can see that today nowadays billions of messages are passed instantly between different computers over the internet. And now we can see that how an email works. There are three major components on how an email works. So, here we can see that in the internet there are many computers that are connected through a common communication network, and the major components that are sitting in the computers are, we need to have some software in the client computer or the server computer to have a communication or to send messages over the internet. So, here the major components for to send email between systems are available as user agents, mail servers, and the main protocol that works here is the SMTP protocol and a POP3 protocol or an IMAP protocol. Let us see what is called an user agent. It is actually a software that is sitting in the web client, and it is called as a mail reader, and we need to have this client web client software called user agent to be available in the client side to send some message to another computer over the internet. The purpose of this user agent is to compose, edit, read, send mail messages, and we can see that there are a lot of examples of this mail reader, and nowadays we are using Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, etc. These are all user agents. They are also called as browsers. Within this browser there is a software called user agent which is actually doing this sending mail messages from this client computer to any other computers in the internet. And any of the outgoing and incoming messages from this client computers are stored on a server, on a web server, or it is going to be stored on a mail server. And there is another component which is required for how to email works is a mail server. In a mail server, it is a server computer, and there should be a software agent sitting in the mail server, and that is normally called as a message transfer agent. In the client side, we call the agent as the user agent. The software sitting in the client computer is called as the user agent, and the agent that is sitting in the server computer is called as the mail server agent. And apart from that, apart from the software, for every user there is a mailbox allotted in the server. This mailbox contains the incoming messages for that user. So there is a mailbox, there is a folder, or there is like a mailbox which is going to store messages that is going to come to this user, and then that's all these are like a storage where temporarily all the mails will be stored. There would be a message queue that is going to have all the outgoing messages, mail messages. And the simple protocol that works to transfer mails between the mail server is an SMTP protocol, simple mail transfer protocol, that transfers messages between mail servers and between the clients. So here you can say that the client we need to have a sending mail server, and the server side we need to have a receiving mail server. Now what is this protocol, SMTP protocol? It is a simple mail transfer protocol that is to send and receive email messages over a TCP IP network. Let us see in detail when you go for the figure. And there is another protocol called POP3, it is a post office protocol, the third version of the post office protocol. This protocol is used for receiving email messages. This maintains, any POP3 server would maintain a text file for every individual user that contains all the messages that are received by the user. And the email client normally interacts with this POP server to download or discover any new email messages for this user. Now we will see the standards that are available in the email. What is required to make our email works, to send messages between computers? The two protocols called the simple mail transfer protocol and the post office protocol, and the internet or the internet mail access protocol, the IMAP protocol. The SMTP is the main email standard, and it originates between the user agent and the mail transfer agent. So this SMTP protocol works between the mail servers to transfer mails between the mail servers, mail transfer agents. And they are originally written to handle only text files, but nowadays this SMTP protocol works to transfer any video or any images and so on. Any multimedia content can be transferred via email. And now usually used in a this SMTP initially works in a 2-tier client server architecture, and nowadays it is also working in a 3-tier architecture. We will see in detail later. And then what is this POP protocol? The post office protocol, another standard for an email to work. This is the main protocol that sits between the receiver user agent and the mail transfer agent. So we have already known that the user agent is available in the client side and the mail transfer agent is available in the mail server. And in order to transfer mails between the mail servers, we need to have a mail transfer agent that passes or sends or receives mails between the mail servers. And this user agent is capable of downloading or receiving the mail messages from the server. And so this post office protocol is a protocol that sits in the client side to download or receive any of the email messages from available for this user from its mailbox. And here we can see that the main difference with the IMAP is The messages can be left at the server after downloading them to the client. Now we can see this figure, it gives an idea of how this email works. We can see that there are mail servers and we can see this SMTP protocol works between the mail servers. Here there are lot of user agents are there. So we can see that every client computer need to have an agent called an user agent. And within this, what is within this mail server, what all the things that mail server maintains? We can see that the yellow boxes, this depicts that every user is given a mailbox and then there is a green queue called the outgoing message queue. This queue is for holding all the outgoing messages for the user, that is to be sent to the other users. So, any mails that comes to this user would be stored in the mail server in the user's mailbox, and when the user agent comes online, he would be able to get or download or receive any of the mail messages that is available in the user's mailbox. Now, we can see the two-tier email architecture. In the two-tier email architecture, we can see that there exist the two components called the user agents and the mail transfer agents. So, the user agents are also called as email clients and they run on the client computers and they send email to email servers. So, we can download email from mailboxes on those servers. So, we can see there are examples like Outlook, Netscape messengers, etc. And here we can see that the mail transfer agents, also called the mail server, they are used by email servers as I have already told you. And this send email between the email servers and they also maintain individual mailboxes and the outgoing message queue. The mailboxes would store all the mails that comes to this user in its mailbox and the queue, the message queue is to store all the outgoing messages of this user. In a two-tier architecture, so there exist two components like user agents and the mail transfer agents. Now we can see this figure. Here we can see that how this SMTP protocol works in a two-tier architecture, client server architecture. So we can see here which starts from the top left corner. Here there is a client computer which has an email client software and we also in other words call it as an user agent. So now here this client computer, from this client computer a user is going to send an email message. So this email message is sent as an SMTP packet to the local mail server. So here you can see that there is an SMTP packet. So whatever message that is sent from this client computer is packed as an SMTP packet and then it is sent to the server computer. So through the internet it goes from the client computer to the server computer. In the server computer there is an email server software and in the other words we call it as the message transfer agent. So now it receives this SMTP packets. Open the SMTP packet, any packet would contain the source address and the destination address. So this email software that runs in the server that is called as the message transfer agent opens the SMTP packet, reads the packet's destination address and sends it over the internet to the receiver's mail server. So now this mail message is packed as an SMTP packet and it is going through the internet from this mail server, from the local mail server to which the client computer is connected to the receiver's mail server. So it travels all through the internet, this SMTP packet now travels through the internet and it reaches the server software, email server software that runs in the remote mail server, which is going to be the mail server, the local mail server that can be connected to the receiver client computer. So here this SMTP packet which is received by the server computer with an email software that stores the message in the receiver's mailbox. So here the computer, the agent, the message transfer agent that runs in the server, the email server would open this SMTP packet and now would store this SMTP, this mail message in the receiver's mailbox. And now you can see that the receiver client computer, now after it connects to the internet, now he wants to download or receive any of the email messages. Now here there is a user agent running in the client computer, the receiver's client computer now which tries to download the message. So, he comes in online or he gets connected to the internet. So, now this client computer who wants to download this email message sends an IMAP or a POP packet. So, here you can see that when the receiver client wants to download the email message, he does not send an SMTP packet, instead he is sending a POP packet, an IMAP or a POP packet. So, it goes through the internet, gets connected to the server, that is a mail server, email server, and then now this email server knows that this client wants to download his email message. So, now this client, the server computer would pack it as an SMTP packet and sends back to the client computer. So, what we can learn from this two-tier architecture is that we can see that this SMTP protocol works between the mail servers, and we need to have a POP protocol that should run on a client computer to receive any of the email messages whenever he gets connected to the internet. So, why you need two different protocols to make this email work? So, SMTP protocol needs the protocol works only if it is connected to the internet. So, when a client computer sends an email message, the receiver computer need not be online or need not be connected to the internet at that point of time. So, whatever messages that are sent to this receiver, it's stored actually in the mail servers, in the email server of the receiver's mailbox, and then whenever this receiver client comes online or get connected to the internet, can download the messages using a POP protocol. So, SMTP protocol requires the users to be online always, whereas this POP protocol does not need it. So, whenever he gets connected to the internet, he tries to download his email message. Now, let us take a three-tier client server architecture. Here the best known example is an web based email. Example we can give as a Gmail. So, now you can see that there is a three-tier. There is a client computer with web browser, a server computer with web server software, and a server computer with an email server software. In a two-tier architecture, we had a web browser and an email server. In a three-tier architecture, we had now a web browser, a web server software, and an email server software. So, what is the difference between a two-tier and a three-tier? So, we had now a web server that is between the web browser and the email server. So, what happens? How does this client computer gets connected to the email server? The web browser first gets connected to the web server and then it gets connected to the email server. So, how does a web browser gets connected to the web server? So, we have seen about the HTTP protocol in the last module. So, here the web browser sends any messages through a protocol called HTTP. So, any information that has to be passed from the web browser is packed as an HTTP packet. So, it is given as a HTTP request to the web server. Now, this web server sends back an HTTP response to the web client. So, for any HTTP request from the web browser, this web server sends back an HTTP response. And then what does it do? It translates now this client's HTTP request into an SMTP packet and then send them to the mail server. So, the purpose of this web server software that runs in a server computer is to convert this HTTP into an HTTP request into an SMTP packet and send them to the mail server. So, what happens with this email server? This email server performs the same function as the mail server in the two-tier example what we have seen in the previous figure. So, now starts the SMTP protocol. From this mail server you transfer to any other mail server, it goes to the receiver computer and then the receiver client reads the mail message. So, here what is the use of this three-tier architecture? We know we do not need to have an email user agent. So, just an web browser, you send any message using an HTTP protocol and then the web server is responsible for converting this HTTP request to an SMTP, and then SMTP packets are normally transferred in the internet through to different mail servers and finally it reaches the receiver's client computer. Now, we can see that how this web based email works. The client computer has a web browser, you can see here. Any email message that has to be sent is packed as an HTTP request and then it reaches the server computer with web server software. On receiving this HTTP request, the server computer sends back an HTTP response to the client, whoever has sent that message. Now, the server computer would now convert this request to an SMTP packet. You can see here an SMTP packet. So, this server computer with web server software would send an SMTP packet to a server computer with an email server software. Now, this email server receives the SMTP packet, sends the SMTP packet to the receiver's email server, to the receiver end. So, it goes through the internet through different mail servers. Finally, it reaches with the address, destination address, it reaches the email server, that is the server computer with the email server software that is locally connected to the receiver's client computer. Now, it is actually, you can see here, this is converted, this SMTP packet is stored as, it is stored in the mailbox, it is actually stored in the mailbox in the server side, in the email server side. Now, when a receiver client also has a web browser, he wants to download the email message. So, what does he do? He sends an HTTP request to the web server, the server computer within web server software. So, now the HTTP request on reaching the server computer with web server software sends an HTTP response back to the client, and then now tries to download the email message from the email server. So, the whatever message that he wants to download would be sent as an, so it initiates an IMAP packet, and then it sends an IMAP or POP packet to the email server would send an IMAP or POP packet to the web server software. This web server would actually convert this IMAP packet and sends it back as an HTTP response. So, this is how a web based email works. Now, let us see that what is the format of an SMTP message, what do you have in it. It has three things: a header, body and attachments. In the header, we have the source and the destination addresses, the date, subject and other information about the email message. In the body, we have the message itself, and we also can have an optional attachments, additional files included along with the email message. Now, let us take a sample SMTP message. Here you can see that there is a from address, there is a to address, from which mail ID and to which mail ID it is sent, the date and the subject, and every message has a unique message ID. You can see here there is a message ID, unique ID used to keep track of messages. Now, the body of the message is given. This is an example of an email message. The body of the message is given. So, here you can see that this SMTP message has no attachments. So, the required one are the from address, to address, date, subject, and there is a unique ID attached with every message in order to keep track of the messages, and then the body of the message, and if required the attachments are also attached with the email message. Now, we have seen that how an email works using the protocol like SMTP, POP or an IMAP protocol. So, this email works well, and we know that it is a very important application or a service that runs in an internet. But what can be the drawback of this email? Nowadays, people do not want to, instead of going for an email, if you want to have an immediate response, they tries to go for another service like instant messaging. Why? Because this email has slow response time and no way of knowing that if a person we are sending email is there to read it. So, the process of having a conversation through email by exchanging several short messages becomes very difficult. So, you send a message, you did not know that whether that receiver has received that message or he has read that message, and you do not get a response immediately. So, we go for another service, a popular service that runs in an internet is an instant messaging. So, instant messaging is also a type of online chat which offers real time data transmission over the internet. And we can see that there are several IM services, instant messaging services available on the internet, like the recent thing before these days you have an MSN Messenger, Yahoo Messenger, but people nowadays are very familiar using a Skype or on WhatsApp that allow us to maintain a list of people that we interact with regularly. And we can send instant messages to any of our contacts in our list as long as the contact is online. So, what is actually required in an instant messaging? We need to be present. All the people who wants to communicate has to be online at that time. So, only if it is, so here you can see that whenever a contact in our list comes online, the IM client informs us through an alert message or by playing a sound. And to send an instant message to a contact, you just click on the contact in the IM client and start typing the message. And the selected contact will receive that message almost immediately after you press and enter. And when the contact's IM client receives the message, it alerts the contact with a blinking sound or by playing sound. And then he can get the contact, then can type a response to the received message and send it instantly. Several such conversations can be carried out simultaneously, each occupying a separate IM windows. So, how it works? Here you can see that first the user launches the IM client, and the IM client finds the IM server and he logs in. Now, he can send, it sends all the user sends his communication information, that is the IP address etc., to the IM server. So, now the IM server knows that this person comes into contact, he is online. So, he finds the user's contacts, this user, the IM user who has now connected to the IM server, his contacts, and sends him the communication information for the ones that is available online, the other contacts that are available online. Now, this IM server also tells the contacts that the user is online, this user is online, and send his or her communication information to them. So, now you can see that a communication happens between the user and his contacts. All are IM clients and they are ready to communicate directly. So, there happens a peer-to-peer communication. And here you can see that the IM server does not play any role here. IM server is responsible for sending, it is making, creating the communication and then leaves it. Now, all this contact, the user and his contacts are able to communicate through the internet. And now, if some new contact comes online, this he gets connected to the IM server, and the IM server sends his contact, all others contacts to this new user, and send this new user contacts to all other users, whoever is online. So, similarly multiple simultaneous conversations are possible at the same time. And when the user logs off, his information is sent, his or her IM client informs the IM server, and this server erases his temporary file and informs all other users about his status, he is not online. Once the IM server provides the communication information to the user and his or her contact's IM client, the two are able to communicate each other without this IM server's assistance. So, this is a serverless connection and it is termed as a peer-to-peer communication. Now, there is another service called a voice over IP. This is to deliver voice from one device to another device through the internet protocol. What happens is the voice is converted to digital form and it is broken down into packets and then transmitted over a TCP IP network. It is also referred to as internet telephony. If you want to talk through an internet, instead of going for a telephone network, you use the internet. Now, what is the advantage of going for an voice over IP? You just pay only an internet charge, you do not pay the other charges. So, it is actually why you go for an WhatsApp to send messages, only the internet charges has to be paid for it. So, it is termed as an internet telephony or an IP telephony or a voice over the internet. So, let us summarize what we have seen in this module. We have looked about the several services that are provided by the internet. We have explored how the email works, and we have discussed about how an instant messaging works. Thank you.